Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd like to ask you a question. What do you think that is? Any idea? Some of you may know it's the original washing machine that was invented about 150 years ago by the Beatty brothers. Generally, it gave people electric shocks and ripped the clothes, but I guess most of us have them in our homes now. Who do you think may have said that? Tom Watson, chairman of IBM, but look at when it was in 1943. This is probably why they thought there would only be 5 computers in the world. And I'd like to ask you, where was this built? Do you know? I'm very proud to say that it was in Manchester in the United Kingdom, my home city. How about Sir Tim Berners-Lee? Why is he famous? What has he done? Only invented the internet. And what do you think that might be? Little clue there. Yeah, that's the prototype of the mouse invented by the American Doug Engelbart. And I'm sure some of us still remember those. Oh my goodness, how life has changed over the last few decades. And you know, it affects every aspect of life. Taking a proactive approach to change is the only way to take charge of the future, either as an individual or as an organisation. Approach it with an open mind and learn to develop its positive elements. Why do companies have to change? Why does there have to be change? Have a think, perhaps from your experience, what has been the reasons for change? It may have been social. So a lot of things, for example, attitudes to women in the workplace and a lot of the social changes that we've seen over recent decades. It might be economic. About 14 years ago, we had the credit crunch, which had a big impact on organisations. And of course, technology, probably the biggest reason that companies are changing. Certainly during my working life, there have been phenomenal changes in technology. And of course, globalization. Companies now have branches all over the world, and particularly shops. I'm very fortunate that normally I travel the world, and you can't walk down some main streets in cities without seeing the shops that we all recognize from our home cities as well. Competition, of course. Now, this was my own experience of change. In the late 1990s, I was working with Granada Media, a very successful television company. We'd merged with other companies, and when I first started with Granada in 1990, there were maybe 3 or 4 terrestrial channels, that was all. By the time I left in 2000, there were hundreds, digital and satellite channels, huge amount of competition, and something had to be done so that the company could thrive through this competition. And basically, a new chairperson was brought in. He cut the company in half, got rid of half the directors, they got rid of half their managers, they got rid of half their staff. And it made the company, as we called it, fit for the future. It meant that Granada continued and basically became ITV. So it was a big change, a big disruption in our lives. And an awful lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today is based on some of those experiences. And then innovation, of course, and not just technological innovation, but also working practice, different ways of working. It's very different now from in the 80s. Mental health is much more to the fore, thank goodness. And of course, legislation. One of the things, the legislation about smoking is one of the biggest things that's impacted on bars and hotels, for example, and other laws that are passed that can impact on businesses, and they have to change how they work. And of course, population. Generally, our population is aging, and this has to be there has to be changes because of that. But also just simple things. The film industry, you remember when teenagers started going to the movies in the 50s and 60s? Those were the people who loved the teenage films and so on. Those people still love going to the movies, but they want a different type of film. So there's a lot more films being made now aimed at people in the 60s, 70s, and so on. And of course, more recently, we've had pandemic, which has caused incredible changes. All of a sudden, people have had to work at home. They've had to homeschool their children. We've had new technologies to help us have meetings. All those have changed. And it's incredibly important for assistants to keep up with that change, because that makes you invaluable to your organisation. This change needs to happen to keep businesses afloat. Whether we like it or not, it has to happen. Now, the only trouble is there are some downsides of all of this. What do you think are the effects of change on people? What are the impacts? What have you experienced? Of course, one of the biggest ones is stress. This impacts on our health. People are anxious. There may be bad communication or lack of communication. This can lead to lack of productivity, bad work environment, and it's a vicious circle because all that leads to stress as well. And this is not how things should be. Because again, we're very aware of people's mental health. And if there's going to be change in an organisation, it needs to be dealt with in a positive way. People need to not get these negative side effects. So we need to adapt and develop. As I said, a lot of this comes from my own experience working with my MD, who really got us through the change that took place in our organisation. So what does it mean to adapt and develop? First of all, we need to be flexible. A very, very important part of an assistant's role. My goodness, how flexible have we had to be during the pandemic? So what is a flexible person? They tend to be excited by new ventures. They're not the sort of people who say, oh, it's perfectly all right as it is. Why do we have to change? We've done it like this for the last 30 years. Why on earth do we need to change? They're the sort of people who say, okay, let's have a look. Let's see how this is going. If things do go wrong, a flexible person says, okay, that didn't work. Let's try another way. Let's try something else. And they can ride through those setbacks. And of course, flexible people love learning. And to me, the day I stop learning, I give up. I learn something new every day. And I think it's a great part of our life, is that learning new things all the time, having new experiences. A flexible person takes the long-term view. So yes, it's tough at the moment. Maybe there's a big reorganization. Maybe there's new systems to learn. But in the long run, this could be great. This is going to be so much better. We've just got to get through it and it'll be fine. But in the meantime, relish those short-term successes. Each time as you've got a new skill, something good's happened, relish those, enjoy them. Say, we're on our way here. This is great. And personal challenges, those are what keep us young, keep us stimulated, keep us energized. Those personal challenges, pushing ourselves slightly out of our comfort zone. It is very easy to sit back and think, oh, I don't want to do that. And then sometimes you say, well, I've got to do it, so I'm going to get on with it. And then you do it and it's, oh, so glad I did that. And you can feel very brave sometimes. So that personal challenge can be so good for us. And then flexible people move quickly to take opportunities. They also make opportunities. We can't just wait for things to fall in our lap. We've sometimes got to make those opportunities. And definitely, if there are opportunities offered to us, take them up. Take every opportunity to benefit in every way you can. If you go to my website, you'll have the details at the end. There's an article called The World's Your Oyster, and it's all about goal setting. And goal setting is a really important part of change because it's thinking about, what do I want? What do I need to do to get there? And a big part of our PA training is talking about that. So here we are, a flexible person. First step in adapting and developing. What else can we do to really adapt and develop? Keep ourselves informed and updated. Speak to people. Sometimes, you know, that people can't tell you what's happening because they don't know, or because there is an order, there's a cascade of information, and so it may not be possible, but it doesn't mean you can't ask questions. And generally, learning, going on social media, finding out about technologies, finding out about business practices, new systems, new ideas. Get yourself informed as much as possible. And then you may say, well, why am I resisting this change? Why do people resist change? What do you think? What is it that makes you feel like, oh, this change, it's really scary? We all said we feel anxious, we feel nervous. Why? Because it's taking us out of our comfort zone. Because it's making us feel nervous. Because we're frightened we can't meet the standard required. But the thing is, if the change is going to happen, resistance is futile. So, okay, we could follow. So just sit back and wait and see what happens. Or we could be leaders of the change. Now, those of you who've been on my courses, you know, I talk about how assistants are emotionally intelligent leaders. And this is one great way to be a leader, to make suggestions, to get in there, become involved, and try and make the change benefit you. Mix with people who welcome change. If you hang out with people who are moaning about the change, that doesn't look good for you. It's not good for your mental health either. So build relationships with people who are open to change, to new ideas. And that goes for not just within your organization, but outside your organization. So networking with other assistants through global events like Executive Support Magazine organised, with the International Management Assistants, with the World Admin Alliance, all these amazing organisations that enable assistants to work together, collaborate, help and support each other. Mix with people who welcome change. And avoid negativity. Try to avoid those people who moan about everything. They bring you down. Try and reframe and turn those negatives into positives. And don't be the negative person. Respond positively. So be enthusiastic. You may have some doubts, but we can express those doubts, but we can express them in a positive way. So, for example, instead of saying to management, oh, we're all fed up of all these changes, why not instead say, these frequent changes are causing quite a bit of concern, but I'd be happy to help to find ways to make it work well for everybody if I can do that. So you're showing your willingness to collaborate and cooperate, but yet you're still getting across the fact that there's something that people are not very happy about. And again, assertiveness, one of the major skills for for assistants, and one of the very first things I cover in our courses. So question everything. Question what you are doing. Question if the way you're doing something is still the best way. It may be, but it may not be. There may be better ways. But by constantly questioning, then you are checking that you're keeping up to date, you're still effective and efficient. So again, the networking, talking to people, what are they doing? How are they working? Technology is the greatest thing. Often, you know, you're meeting people and you learn about new technologies, new systems. This is one of the wonderful things when I'm training. I learn so much about all the new systems and equipment, software, hardware that is available. Also organizations, sources of information, all these sort of things can really, really help you to become an invaluable part of your organization and to lead the change. Cultivate your curiosity. Never stop learning. Ask questions. Read. Be as informed as you possibly can. Now, I'm an NLP practitioner, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and part of it is about building relationships. And I mentioned to you this building relationships, an incredibly important part of you becoming the leader of the change and benefiting from the change. And I'd like to share with you some thoughts from that. That if we sit up and take notice of what makes other people sit up and take notice, they'll take notice of us. So it's all about building relationships, being aware of other people. And here we go, it's Ashby's law of requisite variety. If you have more flexibility in your thoughts and behaviors than other people, then you can influence the outcome of the interactions with those people. So by small changes in our behavior, we can really influence the outcome of our relationships with people. Now, this is not being manipulative. This is not being hypocritical. This is being emotionally intelligent. We are adapting our behavior, what we say, how we think, to make sure the other people feel comfortable. We're making them feel valued. I'm sure many of you know of Maya Angelou, who I just love all her quotes that we find on the internet. Absolutely amazing. My favorite one is, generally people will forget what you say. Generally they'll forget what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel. By making people feel valued, we get them on our team. The working environment is better. We can work together with people much more successfully. So it's that sitting up and taking notice of what's important to them. What are their priorities? What's important to them? What are they interested in? You can use that to sell your ideas, tell them how they will benefit. Get their attention and say, this, we've got to change this has got to change. So let's see how we can do this, because I know you would like to work at home more, or you would like to have a different way of working. Put these suggestions out there and make sure that people feel valued by you. Another part of NLP are what we call the presuppositions of NLP, and there are many, many of these. I'm going to share with you this particular one, which says the map is not the territory. What this means simply is, unless you've been there, how can you possibly know what it's like? I'll share this with you for two reasons. One is, you as an assistant should always be aware of the other person's story. And don't judge people based on your story. We're all coming from different places. If there's going to be change in an organisation, we can't base our plans on what we feel, on what we think. We need to consider how other people feel. We've all got a different story. Find out and understand other people, and then you can influence because of that. I also share this with you for your managers. Please don't let your managers make decisions based on Excel spreadsheets. So some of your changes, I'm talking about change this morning, but sometimes it might be very small changes, just simply new systems, office moves, these sort of things. But sometimes it's very big changes involving redundancies, reorganizations, and so on. Those are certainly ones that I've been most involved with. I heard about a company maybe a couple of years ago, and they needed to save money. They needed to make cutbacks. So they had a look at who was bringing money into the company, and it was a legal firm. And in legal firms, they have this phrase that I'm afraid I don't really like very much, which is they call them the fee earners and the support. Now, I don't know how they think the fee earners earn their fees. They need the support. So I find I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that phrase. But they have a look at these spreadsheets, and they looked at all the money that the fee earners were bringing in. But then they said, oh, but this group of staff, they don't really bring in any money. So we'll probably should get rid of them. And of course, this was all the support staff. So suddenly all your so-called fee earners were having to do all their own admin and were therefore bringing in less money. Incredibly short-sighted. And it's that, you know, just don't judge people without knowing their story. Talk to staff, collaborate, communicate, consult, understand how other people work. I remember a friend of ours who became a chief executive of a company, and he would always talk to everybody at every level of the company. And I think because of that became extremely successful. He wanted to know everybody's story. He wanted to know what they did, what they found problems with. So managers who are going to introduce change into organizations need to collaborate and consult and communicate with the people actually doing the jobs at the moment and working on them. Assistants can help them to do that, enable them to do that, set up the meetings, make suggestions, be proactive. If what you're doing isn't working, do something else. We cannot sit in our office moaning about what's happening that we're not happy about. Do something about it. Talk to management, talk to colleagues. But as I always say on all my courses for assistants, always give your manager solutions, not problems. If you go to your manager and say, this has happened, what should I do? You're giving them a problem. As an assistant, you are there to assist your manager. So how much better to go to your manager and say, this has happened, this is what I thought we could do. Now, they may say, no, we can't do that. It doesn't matter. You've given a potential viable solution. You might even get to a point where you can say, this has happened, this is what I did. I sometimes would do that, and you did occasionally get the, oh no, you didn't, did you? The reply to that is, I thought it was the right thing at the time. There's not one of us assistants who makes a mistake on purpose. We do what we think is right at the time. So rather than being very apologetic and oh, sorry, you know, this sort of thing, you can say, sorry, I just thought it was the right thing at the time. I thought it was the right thing at the time. So offer solutions for the change. Offer solutions for what's not working. Your ideas are valuable. You work in the organization. And remember that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. If someone is making you feel small, it's because you're letting them. Don't let them. That's very easy to say, not so easy to do. I remember I worked with somebody who was a bully, and he would make me feel very small. And the way I dealt with it was, in my head, I used to think, you are making me feel really small. I would never do that to somebody. That makes me a better person than you. It was my way of dealing with it. And it worked until I could get away and work somewhere else. But have confidence. As an assistant, as I said earlier, you are an emotionally intelligent leader. Remember who you are. You are there working with your manager for the success of your organization. You don't work for your manager, you work with your manager for the success of your organization. Like everybody else in your organization, you are there to enable its success. That will probably mean there will have to be changes for all those reasons we looked at earlier. Globalization, population, legislation, economic, pandemic, all these things. I have to say, I cannot get over how amazing assistants have been during the pandemic. Totally adapting to working differently, learning the new technologies, and often whilst homeschooling children as well. So hats off, absolutely amazing. So remember how important you are. You have contributions to make. You are valuable. You are not just an assistant. Never use that word just to define your role or what you do. You are an assistant working with your manager for the success of your organization. And if somebody is making you feel small, you speak like an adult to them. And whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Because if you've decided that you can't do something, then you probably won't even try. So how would you ever know? But if you think, do you know what, I could do that, that's your first step on the road to greatness. So if you have thoughts about how to make things better in your organization, if you have thoughts of how to improve the way everybody works, of how to make systems more efficient, how to make the image of the organization better, because often the assistants have all these ideas and you can do it, but you have to do it in the right way. You have to tell people how they will benefit. Don't apologize for giving your ideas. Sorry, could I just suggest something? Say, I've got an idea. Could I share this with you? Remember, it always seems impossible until it's done. Get out there and be amazing. Thank you very much, everybody. This is where you can find me. I do hope you'll join me on social media. There's my website, lots of articles there, also online training, and obviously anything I can help you with for your organisation, just let me know. It will be lovely to hear from you. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.